Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of EASports Talk. I am your host, Ezra A. Skoboloff, and we got a lot to cover today about one specific topic that's on the mind and in the hearts of your Philadelphia sports fans this week. And while we certainly could spend time on other things such as how horribly bad the Flyers are both on TV and in person, we will be talking about the one thing we all care about right now until Sunday. It's time for Birds of War. Ah, ah! Oh, baby, is it Sunday at 1 o'clock yet? Please let our Eagles have this victory. I'm as excited as I've ever been, I feel like, for a non-playoff game. Except, there's a couple other games that are in the running. But right now, pre-game, Wednesday, days away, I am as excited as I feel like I could be. And I took the time earlier today to have a good old conversation with a first-time guest and hopefully a guest for time and times to come. But we're going to get into that conversation and have a good listen. So I'm with my buddy Rob Green Thumb Gardner, and we're getting ready to talk. The big question that every Eagles fan has is, who did the Eagles start? I'm going to assume it's a rhetorical question, Rob, but who is the Eagles starter for you?
Foles. Nick Foles. I just think that they're not going to go anywhere with Vick at all. They may finish 8-8, which we'll all be happy with, but at the same time, I'd rather just see what Foles has for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and that's an easy point to make that you can't really argue if you're a Vick supporter, because I don't know of any Vick supporters who think, although there still are some out there that think that he could be the quarterback of the future, however long that is, maybe 3 games next year before he breaks his arm or something. But I even think right now, if you're just trying to win out, that Foles is the answer over Vick, just because of all the problems that you have with turning the ball over, which is a big part of winning the game, and of course the red zone.
Well, I think Foles is just a better quarterback. Vick's obviously a better athlete, but he pulled his hamstring running out of bounds. I mean, that's what happens when you're in your mid-30s and you run without stretching and you do all those things. So I just think it's time for him to kind of sit in the background and let Foles do what he's got to do. Chip Kelly does not like Nick Foles, though.
Why do you think that?
I think because he's slow. He ran a 5-yard touchdown the other day, so it's not like he can't run at all, but Chip Kelly likes those guys who are just quick.
We know that from college, obviously, because that translates so much better in the college game. But look at all the guys who test off the charts at quarterback, any other position, that are freak athletes who suck. Like, for instance, what's his name? 6'7" guy from Cheney, Ifeanyi Boma.
I've never even heard that name.
Well, you shouldn't have. But that was the guy coming into training camp, 6'7", ran like a 4.5 or something like that, wide receiver. They took a chance on him, bringing him for quarterback. He couldn't even make an Eagles team that had Macklin go down, and we're like, who the hell is going to, run routes besides Deshaun Jackson?
Well, that's the other thing too with this receiving core. You need an accurate passer. You don't need a guy who can throw it 100 miles an hour and make them jump for it or miss. You got to have someone who's going to hit them right in the numbers every time. And I think that's going to be more often Foles than Vick.
Yeah, and I don't even think it matters. Obviously, it helps when you have Megatron or someone like Larry Fitzgerald who can just go up and get a bad pass and just throw the ball to him. But no matter what team you're playing for, accuracy is what makes a great quarterback.
Yeah, don't get me started on Megatron, though. I got him on my fantasy team, and he had 1 point the other day.
Yeah, luckily, shout out to my boy Eli, who I beat the shit out of last week in fantasy. ran with Megatron, can't blame him doing that. But yeah, I think he had 2.5 points or something. Helped me get the victory.
Brutal.
Yeah, so, obviously, like I mentioned, the red zone, turnovers, sacks are some big things in the difference between Foles and Vick. So I'm just going to run through a bunch of them for you. Obviously, in the first 6 games, the Eagles have produced over 400 yards of offense every game,
right,
which is great, which is, is good offense just on that alone. But clearly the point of yards is to score touchdowns.
Exactly.
I think everyone knows that, but certainly that's a stress of Chip Kelly and his frustration.
Touchdowns are worth more than field goals.
Yeah, they are. And funny you bring that up. I'll give you the specifics, but just for starters, Foles compared to Vick in terms of points scored per trip in the red zone. Mike Vick this season was taking the Eagles down inside the 20, and they were coming away with an average of 4 points. Now, obviously smaller sample, but Foles is giving you 5.7 points per red zone trip.
Nice. Well, we know Foles is playing this weekend.
Yeah.
We know that. Vick has all but said, I'm out. He just keeps on talking about when he's healthy, when he's healthy, when he's healthy. Give me a week. So we'll see. We'll have a bigger sampling after this week.
Certainly, and I don't see that changing because of the type of quarterback that Foles is in terms of accuracy and getting rid of the ball quicker. So does it mean that it's going to stay up to like close to a touchdown per trip to the red zone? Probably not, but I don't see him dropping to Michael Vick levels. And to expand on those stats as well, let's see, that's 4 of 7 red zone touchdowns for Foles versus 5 of 14 for Vick. So, you could look at really any stat, as well as a 57 quarterback rating for Vick versus 105 for Foles. Again, sample size is about twice as much for Vick than it is Foles this season. But this is the thing for Vick that's been his career. This isn't something new for him.
Right, and Vick, well, you talk about the sample size, Vick's almost got twice as many snaps, twice as many trips to the red zone. He's got 5 touchdowns. Foles has 4 in a game and a half?
Yeah.
That's total. That's total.
Yeah.
That's not just red zone. That's total. That alone tells you that he runs the offense better, and he's not just. We talked about this the other day about how people call him a game manager. He manages the game. Is that a bad thing?
Yeah.
Is it bad to manage the game and throw for 300 yards and
well, that's
score
not even
in the
game
red zone?
Management, but what do you call Ben Roethlisberger?
Well, you call him a damn good quarterback with 2 championships.
Well,
so
of course. But because he's a guy, obviously he might not have the ability to keep plays alive, but just somehow not getting taken down. But that's a guy I look at. Do you think Roethlisberger is a huge arm? I mean, he throws a deep ball well, but do you think of him as a guy who throws a fastball?
No, but his deep ball isn't all that pretty either. He just kind of chucks it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. He's had the luck of having a good offensive line for a lot of his career.
Yeah,
and now you see
any quarterback.
Well, and now you see what happens. Those guys they're all banged up, and he can't do anything. He can't make anything happen with his feet when he's got the whole rush in his face.
Oh yeah.
And you talk about a guy who creates with his feet, like Tony Romo. We're going to see that this weekend because the Eagles are going to get in on him, and he's going to scamper. And when he does, he's going to complete passes. And when he does, we're going to hear whoever, Gruden or Collinsworth or whatever dicksucker it is, he's basically going to say that Tony Romo makes magic with his feet, which is crap. Tony Romo is, he's Ben Roethlisberger without the freaking titles. That's exactly what he is. I can't stand him anyway.
Yeah, well, we'll certainly get more at him, but here's a clear indication of anytime we talk quarterbacks and Eagles, we can talk about how much we hate Eli Manning or Tony Romo, and that's just a great quality we have as Eagles fans.
Correct.
But quick more, we know about turnovers, the stats, there aren't that many to go off of. This year, not that big a sample size. Obviously, we knew the troubles that Vick had, especially against Kansas City. But in terms of sacks, which is another big thing that winds up killing drives and is the definition of inefficiency in an offense, in 4.5 games, Vick was sacked 14 times. That's 3 a game. And just to go back to 2012, he averaged 2.8 sacks per game in about 10 games. Foles in his rookie year had the same average through 7 games. of sacks as a rookie. And we know rookies hold the ball longer. They're not quick to making their reads. And it's the same. But we're talking about a rookie versus a veteran who's been in the league for about a decade. This year, though, Foles, again, compared to the 14 and 4.5 of Vick, 2 sacks in 1.5 games. And this is a guy who's not mobile and can't make plays with his legs.
Yeah, and take into account last year he was on a 4-12 team who all but totally gave up on Andy Reid.
And not only that, but the offensive line, while it sucked clearly with Vick, it was even worse when Foles got in there because you're running these guys that are really practice squad level players.
Right, and Andy Reid was running plays that high school coaches ain't going to run. You know, he was stubborn, man. He would stick with his game plan. Chip Kelly's not going to do that. Chip Kelly will stick to his game plan, but the thing is it doesn't suck from the start. Andy Reid's game plan coming in was throw, and Chip Kelly's already showing that he's going to run the ball, which helps protect the quarterback. You know, you establish a running game, the quarterback that eliminates the pass rush a lot of times, or at least it lessens it. So Foles has that going for him too.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's a question I have. If Vick were healthy and he was starting against Dallas, how would you see the game going?
I'd see it being a battle of turnovers because in that number of Vick getting sacked this year, he hasn't turned the ball over as much this year as he did last year. But last year, if you recall him getting sacked, every time he got sacked, it looked like I think he fumbled. And that's what I think this game would come down to. I think Foles will control the ball a little better. But with Vick in the game, I think you're looking at 3 or 4 turnovers per team. And whoever gets the last turnover, whoever steals the ball the last time may win that game.
Okay, and now you got into a little bit. If it was the reverse, which we're going to see, Foles starting against the Cowboys, what's your outlook?
I think it's high scoring. I still think we win on the same virtue. Basically, Tony Romo turning the ball over.
Yeah.
But I see Foles controlling the ball a little bit better. Maybe he might throw a pick, but he's not going to throw 3. He's not going to fumble twice, and Romo will. So that's it. Plus, they don't have DeMarco Murray.
Big.
Which is that's their running game, which means that Romo's going to have to do too much. And they don't have DeMarcus Ware, who, by the way, they might have the 2 dumbest names in football, DeMarco and DeMarcus. So anyway, so between them 2 missing, that eliminates their pass rush and their running game. So
and I believe Anthony Spencer's out as well.
Yeah, exactly.
They are. That is the one thing. Our line, even though much improved from last year, still to me hasn't played all that well.
Yeah, exactly.
And the strength of both, the Giants D and the Dallas D is their pass rush has been so good. But it's looking like, and I should add about the sacks, the 1 full game, or rather that first game, the half game, and even Tampa Bay has a solid pass rush. But those are 2 teams people try to discredit because they haven't won a game. Those are 2 teams typically with solid D, and their strengths are up front. And he's getting less sacks per game than Vick.
Tampa's D this year is solid. The Giants' D is weak this year.
But their pass rush is undoubtedly their strength, right? They have players on the team that are supposed, like Jason Pierre-Paul. These guys are supposed to be guys that get to the quarterback.
Yeah, but they stink this year.
There's no question.
Problem. Justin Tuck, I haven't seen him one bit. That's the whole thing, is that these guys who they were relying on, they either got old or got tired or they just suck. I don't know.
Well, it's always a reason to celebrate here in Philly, that's for sure.
True that.
But so last thing I just want to get into, a lot of people talk about, like you mentioned, Foles being a game manager, Foles having the ceiling of, one of those guys who's just going to manage a game. He's not going to necessarily lose it. He's not going to win it. A lot of people see his ceiling potentially as being a really good backup and all that, which is funny because the guy hasn't even started 10 games in his career. This is not. He played 7 last year. I don't think that was all started. Was it 6 starts last year? Regardless, he's still not even started 10 games.
Right.
Still, if he finishes out the season this year, then he'll have close to or a little bit more than like a full season worth of starts.
Right.
And everyone's talking about what they know about him. We know what Nick Foles is. I don't understand how people, especially people on the radio and fans calling in, who don't know anything about football, who don't know about talent and understanding talent and developing talent, saying that we know what he has. How do you say that you know what we have in Foles when the guy's barely played and is a rookie? And not that I'm saying he's going to be these guys, but I took down the 3 guys that I think most resemble the type of style he is, where he doesn't have a big arm. He's a bigger guy who gets the ball out quick and is about making good decisions.
Right.
And again, not he's going to turn out to be like this, but Brady, Manning, and Big Ben are probably the 3 most successful quarterbacks that have that style. You could think of some other guys, and feel free to chime in on who those guys are, but I have the stats from their rookie years.
Okay.
All right. Any other guys you want to add in real quick that you can think of?
I can think of now.
Okay. So first, Brady.
Ryan.
What's that?
Matt Ryan.
Yeah, that's a guy I also thought of a little bit too. Didn't grab his stats, but we knew him more certainly for winning in his rookie year, first couple years.
True.
Not necessarily, which is really all that matters, but not necessarily the the production that he had. But that's going to be the same, of course, for any rookie that's starting. So Brady in 15 games, 2,800 yards, 18 TDs. And ready, 12 picks and 9 fumbles for Brady. Obviously, I believe that was the year after he stepped in for Bledsoe. Did something in the playoffs, showed that he could be the starter. They gave him the 15 games, and that's what he had there. But still, obviously, they weren't saying with that type of performance, we got to move on from someone else because this is his second year. We got to draft someone. And granted, I don't know what the draft class was after that.
Super Bowl, right?
Oh, well, obviously.
That helps.
But so that's his first year. Manning, while of course I heard on the radio too, well, we can't compare him to Manning because Manning was a first overall first round pick, whereas Foles wasn't. Foles was a second round pick. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously not the same talent level and projections coming from people, but the drop off from 1 to 2 is not as big, I think, as people tend to make it. But regardless, when a rookie's starting.
When you have a number 1 overall pick, like that's usually, with the exception of like a Tim Couch or an Achilles Smith or whoever it was, they're usually far and away better. If it's a shoe-in, like a
Andrew Luck.
A hands down number 1 pick is going to be above all these other guys. But yeah, if you're talking about someone who's taken in the middle first round or something like that, they're all interchangeable.
Right, and of course Brady and Big Ben were not, high draft picks. We all know about Brady being 199. Yeah. And that being the Brady pick every year when someone has that draft selection. But even so, I don't know what your expectations are potentially for a guy who's number 1 overall, like Manning or Vick in their first year. Right. Manning or Luck in their first year versus someone else. But to get to Manning, I know you jotted down the notes and your eyes got wide, but he started all 16 games, 3,700 yards, which is obviously solid, 26 TDs to 28 picks and 3 fumbles. So obviously a guy who's known for taking care of the football now.
28 picks.
Picks.
That's the number that got my attention. I saw that and I just thought he probably hasn't thrown that many since.
I would seriously doubt it.
In a season, yeah.
Right. Well, with that guy, maybe he has only a little more than 28 picks the rest of his career. At least in the last 8 years.
Except in the playoffs.
Yeah, well, we don't need to get into that. We can only hope that Nick Foles, if we get there and he's still starting, is a big time type of guy. And I see that potential, but that's another discussion. So lastly, Big Ben started 14 games, 2,600 yards, 17 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, and a fumble, which is pretty solid. Similar to the Manning numbers, with the exception of 9 fumbles versus 1. That's an interesting stat. Sort of an anomaly
Big
when
Ben's
you look at
stats
Brady's
there
years.
They're pretty pedestrian. That's pretty standard Pittsburgh numbers.
Right.
It's not too many yards, not too many throwing touchdowns, a few picks.
And what's interesting now is they develop the offense around him, and now they start maybe not this year. This is not the best year to think about it, but the last few years when they still had Mike Wallace, Antonio Brown, some of these other guys, Hines Ward when he's still playing, their game, Heath Miller, their game was more down the field than just try to run it 2 times and have a 3rd and short. So
this is true.
These, again, are 3 guys that I don't know where his ceiling is, and I'm not predicting that it's going to be any of those guys. But for the Philly fans and the guys on the radio to think that we know what he is already is just funny to me.
I think I think they still have that bitter Kevin Cobb taste in their mouth, where they think that he's Foles is gonna. This is as good as he's gonna get. He might win a few games in relief, but when push comes to shove and you hand him the job, he's going to fall apart. Kevin Cobb just lost his job to an injury. To Vick,
that line.
Vick. And then he went to first Arizona,
whose line is god awful,
and then he went to Buffalo.
Buffalo.
He wasn't really set up to win anywhere else. If he had gone to a Denver or gone to a team that competes.
Right.
He might have been. It might be a different story. He might still be in the league throwing for 3,500 yards and 25 touchdowns a year.
And the difference, though, between Nick Foles and Kevin Cobb is the turnovers. He gave you a lot of yards, Kevin Cobb, and had some games. I think he almost threw for 400 yards one game. But he was a guy that was turning the ball over fairly consistently.
He was throwing the ball away, but that could have been the defense.
But just in terms of the first 7 or 8 games that the guys got, I'm not sure exactly how many Cobb got. The difference you clearly see is one guy takes care of the ball much better than the other, which is a big part of winning football games.
Talk about sample size, though. I think that the jury is still so out on Nick Foles. See, I almost did it. But Nick, you can't really judge him yet, so just let him play so that we know what he. If we want to know what he is.
If you want to take a quarterback in the draft, I'm fine with that, but you got to see what Nick Foles has. If he plays really well, I'm not sure exactly how that scenario is going to go down, but if he plays really well, there's going to be a real, over the season that is, there's going to be a real discussion going on because we have so many holes on our defense.
They need a safety.
We need a safety. We need some better pass rush. There's a lot of holes to fill, potentially another receiver. Whatever it is that happens, if Nick Foles winds up being your quarterback and you make that, now you have a first round, second round. You can spend all your picks on these huge positions we need to fill, and you have your main guy.
I agree, at least for another year.
Yeah.
At least for another year. If he buys us 1 or 2 more years, of course, Philly fans are not known for their patience.
No. But yeah, I think it could be good, and you're looking at a guy too. We haven't even mentioned that's in a completely new offense. Second coach, second system, second offensive coordinator in 2 years.
Right, exactly.
Gotta let the guy grow.
That's what I think too. I think you let him play the rest of the year, unless he gets hurt, and then Vick steps in and does the job, and then Vick wins the job by an injury. I just think it just makes more sense. The locker room is not going to be divided. Riley Cooper will have a few more catches, and, we'll get to hear more about him.
All right, cool. So I'd like to thank Rob Greenthumb again for his contribution. Very good stuff, as always when I speak with him. So I'm glad we could get that one down for the record. And as I mentioned before I played it for you, I hope to have that certainly more often throughout the Eagles season. And he is a contributor to thoughts about all Philly sports, so it doesn't have to stop after the Eagles season. So I'm just gonna wrap things up a little bit with just a quick little discussion about the Eagles and the Cowboys rivalry. And I'm only in my 20s. I haven't been around for as long as this rivalry dates back, and there are certainly some great memories coming home today from work, listening to the stories of Ray Dininger and some of the ones he told about this rivalry. And there are some really funny, entertaining things that go on. But in terms of my favorite memory as an Eagles fan against the Cowboys, it starts in such an odd, never could have thought it would have happened way. But take it back to, I believe this is 2010. Eagles and Cowboys are playing in Week 17 in Philadelphia. Last game of the season, of course. Unfortunately for the Eagles, to get into the playoffs, they need three things to happen, one of which they can control. That one, of course, being beating the Cowboys at home. The other, unfortunately, was that they needed the Bucs and the Bears both to lose. Otherwise, there was no way they were making the playoffs. And this was a game that originally was slated to be an early game with the NFL network rules giving the networks the opportunity to choose to move a more popular pivotal game late in the season back to a late start. That gave the Eagles the potential, or rather the opportunity, to sit back and know what they had to do and if they had a chance coming into their game. And thankfully, the Bucs and the Bears did their part. And the Bucs are playing the Raiders in Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay was up 10 points in the fourth quarter. About the 11:30 mark, they went up 10 points. Jamarcus Russell, yes, the Jamarcus Russell winds up leading the Oakland Raiders back. They wound up winning by 7 points. The Bears played in Houston. They took a 10-point lead themselves in the first quarter. They wound up losing by 7, 31-24. And all of a sudden, both teams, both the Cowboys and the Eagles, knew that they were going to play a win-or-go-home playoff scenario for the last wild card spot. And you know what? Going into that day, really, I didn't have too much expectations in terms of if we were going to make the playoffs or not. I assumed that maybe one of those teams would lose. Maybe I wasn't even thinking about specifically who might lose or who might not. But I tell you, even to this day, I remember that the Bucs are playing the Raiders, and I knew that there was a very small chance that we were making the playoffs because of that. But thank you, Jamarcus. I personally hope you get signed to some team at some point, because I think the hard work you put in has been pretty sweet. Check that out on Bleacher Report, by the way, if you haven't seen it. But win or go home scenario in Week 17, the Eagles win 44-6. Just an ass kicking that you could not have even dreamed of. And they wound up actually going to the NFC Championship game after that remarkable weekend and victory. So there's another anecdote on how you can play really well going into the playoffs, and that can turn into potential big-time run that ends with a ring on your finger like a lot of these teams do. So that was just one of the greatest memories I've had. There are certainly others in my time, but clearly plenty before my time. But if you have some other great Cowboy Eagles memories that you'd like to discuss and share, then certainly bring it up with me, and I'll be glad to discuss it next week, hopefully after an awesome victory. So, again, I'd like to thank the listeners. I do want to take one quick second to address some fans' comments and questions. And my friend Dom wanted to ask about trade rumors about LeBron James for Nerlens Noel. And I got to tell you, that trade is so tough for me, because while LeBron is a pretty decent player, Nerlens has the most amazing flat top I have ever seen. And beyond that, he's a stick figure that is a monster and can jump through the roof. So I don't know, it'd be really hard. Like I like LeBron's sneakers and his shoe collection, but that flat top is so difficult. I would say if you threw in maybe Ray Allen, one of my all-time favorites, I would take that trade. Otherwise, yeah, you gotta stick with Nerlens, man. I don't know that LeBron gives you as much as that flat top. So thank you, Dom, for submitting your question. I'm certainly able to answer any of your fans' questions, whether they're serious or not. And look forward to talking about this awesome game next week. Have a good one, fellas.